Hey, dear members of the Endless Love Journey. Today, we will bring you a romantic love story, so let's get started. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any meaningful stories. Part 1, The Fated Encounter. Rain poured over New York like a gray curtain, shrouding streets already weary from a long day. Dr. Emma Carter, 32, stepped out of Brooklyn Community Hospital. Her shoulders ached after a 12-hour shift. Her navy coat was soaked, and her white sneakers were streaked with mud, but her sharp brown eyes still burned brightly, as if fatigue were a stranger to her. As an ER doctor, she was no stranger to blood, screams, or death. But tonight, all she wanted was to go home, sink into a hot bath, and forget the world. The dark alley cutting across her route home was a familiar shortcut, though it always carried a damp, musty stench. The rain drowned out all other sounds until a hoarse groan rose from the corner of a crumbling wall. Emma stopped, her medical instincts kicking in before her rational mind could object. She tilted her head, listening. The groan came again, faint but distinct. "Damn it," she muttered, pulling her collar higher and stepping into the shadows. Under the dim glow of a street lamp filtering through the rain, she saw a man curled up on the filthy ground. Blood seeped from his chest, mingling with a murky puddle. One hand clutched a short-barreled pistol, not some cheap piece, but one gilded with gold, glinting oddly amid the chaos. On his ring finger sat a silver band engraved with a sharp D. He didn't look like a homeless man or a random victim. His clothes were torn but made of expensive fabric, his leather shoes polished despite the mud, and more importantly, he was conscious. His deep black eyes locked onto hers. "If you want to live, leave," he said, his voice low and cold, more a command than a plea. A man shot, yet still exuding authority, intrigued and irritated Emma in equal measure. She knelt beside him, ignoring the water soaking through her jeans. "And if you want to live, shut up and let me help," she shot back, her tone just as sharp. Her hands quickly assessed the wound. A bullet lodged in his chest near the ribs, but it hadn't hit the heart. "Lucky, but barely," she muttered. He smirked, a weak but sardonic grin. "Who do you think you are, Mother Teresa?" "No," Emma snapped, pulling a mini first aid kit from her backpack. "I'm the only idiot dumb enough to save someone like you. Now lie still, unless you want to die faster." She tore his shirt open, exposing a raw red wound and a small, intricate dragon tattoo on his left shoulder, a detail that made her pause for a second. This wasn't an ordinary man. He gave a faint huff, his eyes still fixed on her. "You've got guts, doctor, but guts won't save your life." "Shut up," Emma cut him off, pressing hard on the wound to stem the bleeding. He groaned but didn't resist. She didn't know who he was, but her gut told her calling the cops now would be a mistake. If whoever shot him was still lurking, she'd be the next target. "I don't have an ambulance here, so you'll have to tough it out. No whining." "I'm not whining," he replied, his voice raspy with pain, but still laced with arrogance. Emma glanced at her hands that were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline surging through her. She didn't respond, focusing instead on stitching the wound with medical thread. Her mind raced with questions. Who was he? Why was he shot? And that gun, was he a victim or a troublemaker? But she didn't ask, not yet. Once the wound was bandaged, she stood and looked at him. "I'm not letting you die here, but I'm not setting you loose on the streets either. Come with me." He frowned, clearly unused to being ordered around. "What are you going to do, kidnap me?" "No, I'm going to save your life, you idiot," Emma snapped, pulling him to his feet. He was heavier than she'd expected, but she managed to support him, though his weight pressed hard against her. "If you fall, I'm not carrying you." "I won't fall," he said, his voice firm despite his ragged breathing. "You're weaker than I thought." "Then walk yourself," Emma retorted, letting go. He staggered briefly before reluctantly leaning on her again. She smirked, pleased with her small victory. Her apartment was just a few blocks away, but the short journey felt like an eternity. Rain kept falling, his blood seeping through her clothes, his labored breathing mixing with the sound of their footsteps on the wet pavement. When they finally got inside, Emma locked the door, eased him onto the sofa, and flipped on the lights. The white glow revealed his face, angular, dangerously handsome, with wet black hair plastered to his forehead and eyes that seemed to pierce through her. "My name's Daniel," he said, his voice still cold despite its faintness. "Emma," she replied curtly, avoiding his gaze as she checked his wound again. "Now tell me, who shot you?" Daniel gave a dry chuckle. "You're too curious, doctor, but I don't spill my life story to strangers." "Fine," Emma said evenly, her eyes cutting like a blade, "because I like hearing stories from gun-toting types anyway." She stood, grabbed a water bottle from the kitchen, and tossed it to him. Daniel caught with his uninjured hand, the motion so quick it made her pause. "Good reflexes," she remarked, crossing her arms. "For a guy in death's door." "I'm not dead yet," Daniel replied, unscrewing the cap and taking a sip, his eyes never leaving her. "Thanks to you or my stubbornness. Take your pick." "Thanks to me," Emma interjected, sitting across from him. "But don't expect me to keep going unless you come clean. Who shot you and why?" Daniel fell silent, his gaze flickering with calculation. Before he could answer, Emma's phone buzzed on the table. An anonymous message popped up. "He's ours. Hand him over or die." A chill ran down her spine as she read it. She turned to Daniel and tossed him the phone. "Explain." He glanced at the screen and smirked, as if it were no surprise. "Welcome to my world, doctor," he said, his low voice dripping with irony. "You just bought yourself a ticket." Emma clenched her jaw, snatching the phone back. "Your world can clean up its own mess." "Don't drag me into it," she growled. But her mind was already racing. This wasn't a joke. Someone knew where she was, knew she had Daniel. She wasn't afraid of dying, but she hated being pulled into someone else's trouble. "You can't escape it," Daniel said, leaning back on the sofa, his eyes half closed but still radiating danger. "They've seen you with me. You're a target now, like it or not." "Then you're my biggest problem tonight," Emma shot back, standing to grab more gauze. "But don't think I'll play hostage in your little game. I saved you. You owe me." "That's it." Daniel let out a soft laugh, both alluring and infuriating. "Oh, you. I don't like owing anyone, doctor, but let's say I'll pay you back my way." "Don't make empty promises," Emma said, tossing the roll of gauze at him. "Because I don't trust a guy with a gun to keep his word." She turned away, but her heart was beating faster than usual. Daniel wasn't just a patient, he was a puzzle, and she hated admitting she wanted to solve it. Part 2, The Care, a Battle of Wits. Emma Carter's small apartment was unnaturally quiet, save for the steady tapping of rain against the windows and the labored breathing of the stranger sprawled on her sofa. The warm glow of an old table lamp illuminated his face, sharp, cold, with a faint scar running along his left jaw that she hadn't noticed earlier. Daniel, the Dragon Voss 35, opened his eyes. His deep black gaze swept the room before settling on Emma. With a mix of curiosity and weariness, he sat up slowly, one hand pressing against the white bandage on his chest, showing no sign of complaint or weakness. The silence lasted less than 10 seconds before he broke it with a low, commanding voice. "Why are you keeping me here?" Daniel asked, his eyes cutting like a blade. "To play hero or dig for information?" Emma raised an eyebrow, setting her coffee cup on the table with a dry clack. "I'm keeping you here because I don't like watching people die in front of me," she replied, her tone even but laced with sarcasm. "And you, why don't you say thanks instead of barking like a dog?" Daniel smirked, a lopsided grin both charming and infuriating. "Thanks. Want me to kneel and kiss your shoes?" He tilted his head, his voice dropping with mockery. "I don't owe anyone, especially not a self-righteous doctor." "Self-righteous?" Emma let out a harsh laugh, standing and stepping closer, arms crossed. "You're the one shot and lying here, while I'm the one holding the scalpel. Who's higher than who? Tough guy." Daniel didn't answer immediately, just stared at her, his gaze trying to pierce through the tough shell she'd built. "You've got a quick mouth," he said after a moment, his tone lowering but still dripping with arrogance. "But a quick mouth won't save your life." "Then lucky for you, my hands are quicker than my mouth," Emma snapped, turning to grab her medical bag. She didn't want to tangle with him longer than necessary, but the way he looked at her, like a predator sizing up its rival, made it impossible to ignore him. Now lie still so I can check your wound, or do you want to do it yourself? I don't need a babysitter, Daniel growled, but he lay back down, clearly aware he wasn't in a state to argue with the world. Emma leaned over, peeling off the old bandage to replace it. The bleeding had stopped, but the wound was still raw, a reminder that he'd nearly died hours ago. As she worked, her hand brushed against the torn pocket of his jacket. Something hard fell out, clattering to the floor, a small dagger with a gem-encrusted handle that gleamed under the light. Emma picked it up, examining it. The blade was razor-sharp, the handle engraved with a coiling dragon. Not a toy for some vagrant. She frowned, turning to him. What's this? Daniel glanced at the dagger, then at her, a flicker of irritation in his eyes. Rifling through my stuff? Too much curiosity is bad for you, Doctor. No, it fell out on its own, Emma replied coolly, but if you don't explain, I'll assume you're a killer, not a victim. She held the dagger up, letting the light catch the steel. Talk, or I call the cops right now. Go ahead, Daniel shrugged, though the motion made him wince. But don't cry when they don't get here in time to save you from the trouble I bring. Emma narrowed her eyes, setting the dagger on the table, but keeping her hand near it. She deliberately searched his jacket pocket this time and pulled out a black business card with gold lettering. DeVos Chairman, Voss Enterprises. She read it aloud, her voice thick with skepticism. Voss Enterprises? Sounds more like a money laundering front than a real business. Daniel chuckled, a dry sound brimming with confidence. Better at Googling than saving lives, huh? He tilted his head, eyeing her with amusement. Don't dig too deep, or you'll bury yourself. Bury myself? Emma tossed the card onto the table and stepped in front of him, hands on her hips. You're threatening me in my own house after I saved you? I don't know who you are, but I know you don't call the shots here. I'm not ordering, Daniel replied, his voice dropping, his eyes darkening. I'm warning. There's a difference, Doctor. Emma opened her mouth to retort, but a sudden sound cut her off, the crash of breaking glass from the living room window. A Molotov cocktail sailed through, smashing onto the floor and erupting into a blaze of red flames. Emma yelped, stumbling back instinctively, but Daniel reacted faster than she'd expected. He sprang from the sofa, ignoring his wound, and grabbed a blanket from the chair to smother the fire. The flames died quickly, leaving behind a burnt stench and swirling black smoke. Emma stood frozen, her heart pounding. Daniel turned, pulling her into a shadowed corner near the kitchen, his grip tight on her wrist. My enemies are faster than your brain, he said, his tone both taunting and tense. If you were as smart as your mouth, you wouldn't have gotten shot. Emma snapped, yanking her arm free. She rushed to the window, peering out through the shattered glass. The street was dark, only the sound of rain and the faint blur of a car speeding away. Who just did that? And don't tell me don't dig again, she demanded. Daniel leaned against the wall, breathing heavily but maintaining an eerie calm. You really want to know? He asked, his eyes locking onto hers. Because once you do, there's no backing out. I saved you. I have a right to know, Emma shot back, turning to face him. Or would you rather I hand you over to those guys out there to save myself the hassle? Daniel gave a soft laugh, this time less mocking and more an acknowledgement. Fine, he said, his voice lowering. I'm Daniel Voss, and those guys want me dead because I have something they need. Happy now? Not yet, Emma interrupted, stepping closer, her gaze unflinching. What thing and why am I a target just for saving you? Daniel studied her for a long moment, as if weighing whether to tell the truth. Finally, he smirked, his voice dropping with menace. Because I run the Dragon Syndicate, and what they want is a list of every dirty deal the New York elite have ever made. Now you know, Doctor. Congratulations. Emma stood still, her mind reeling. Dragon Syndicate, a name she'd vaguely heard in the news, a notorious crime outfit the police could never touch. She glanced at Daniel, from the dagger to the business card to the gun still on the table. It all clicked, but she wasn't scared. She was furious. So I saved a crime boss, she asked, her voice icy. A smuggler, a killer who's now dragged me into his garbage. You jumped in yourself, Daniel replied, unrepentant. But don't worry, I won't let you die easy. I owe you a life, remember? Oh, me? Emma barked a dry laugh, turning to grab her phone from the table. I don't want a debt from someone like you. I'm calling the cops, and you can fend for yourself. Daniel tilted his head, a glint of amusement in his eyes. Go ahead, but when they get here, who do you think will protect you from those guys out there, me or some uniformed clowns? Emma froze, her hand hovering over the phone screen. He was right. Daniel's enemies knew she was here, and the police wouldn't be fast enough if they struck again. She gritted her teeth, turning back to him. So what's your brilliant suggestion, crime lord? Stay with me, Daniel said, his voice low but firm. I keep you alive. You keep me alive. Fair deal? Fair? Emma smirked, stepping closer, her eyes blazing. Fair would be you getting out of here and leaving me alone. But you're not used to hearing no, are you? Not used to it, Daniel admitted, that half smile returning. But I like a challenge, and you, Doctor, are a worthy one. Emma didn't reply, but in her mind, another battle began between the rational urge to ditch Daniel and the instinctive curiosity to dig deeper into who he was. She didn't know what game she just stepped into, but one thing was certain, she wouldn't lose. Part 3, The Truth, A Clash of Wits. The faint golden light from the old table lamp in Emma Carter's apartment spilled across the scarred wooden floor, where shards of glass from the Molotov cocktail attack still lay scattered like remnants of a small battlefield. The air in the room hung heavy, tinged with the acrid smell of smoke mixed with the damp woods sent from the rain that had just ceased outside. The steady drip of water from a corner of the broken window echoed like the ticking of an invisible clock, counting down the 10 seconds between two people now forced to confront each other in a cramped, suffocating space. Emma leaned against the peeling wall near the kitchen door, her hand gripping her phone as if it were her last weapon. Her sharp brown eyes never left Daniel Voss, the man she'd saved hours ago, who now loomed as the greatest threat in her life. Daniel sat on the worn gray sofa, its frayed fabric torn in places, his hand pressed against the white bandage on his chest, faintly stained with red. His posture betrayed no weakness, despite the fresh wound that must still be agonizing. His deep black eyes studied her, a mix of curiosity and challenge, like an injured dragon still radiating arrogance, waiting to see what his prey or adversary would do next. His wet black hair clung to his forehead, a few raindrops from the earlier dash inside still beating on his torn collar, yet he showed no trace of unease. After his brief confession of leading the Dragon Syndicate, a jolt ran down Emma's spine, not fear, but a blend of caution and curiosity. She'd heard whispers of the organization at the hospital, idle gossip from colleagues about an underworld force even New York's police couldn't touch. Armed smuggling, casino rigging, and clean executions that left no trace. Hearing rumors was one thing, facing their leader was another. She needed confirmation, not from his lips, which she didn't trust, but from what she could uncover herself. Emma strode to the kitchen table, her mud-streaked white sneakers leaving faint prints on the floor. She yanked her old laptop from the corner, flipping it open with a decisive snap. The blue glow of the screen cast light on her face, highlighting her hard features and blazing eyes. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, typing Daniel Voss and Dragon Syndicate into Google's search bar. Each keystroke clicked like a drumbeat, driving her forward. Results flooded the screen instantly, articles, photos, and fragmented lines from underground news sites. One image struck her, Daniel in an expensive black suit, standing before the Voss Enterprises skyscraper, a cold smile on his lips like a declaration of power. The headline beneath made her pause. Mysterious tycoon or mastermind of a criminal empire? She clicked, reading faster as her pulse quickened. The pieces snapped into place in her mind. Voss Enterprises, a seemingly legitimate financial firm, was rumored to be the perfect front for the Dragon Syndicate. Vague reports mentioned the disappearances, massive funds crossing borders, and one name, Daniel Voss. Not just a businessman, but the king of the underworld, pulling strings from the shadows. She slammed the laptop shut with a sharp clack, the sound ringing through the stillness like a declaration of war. Turning to Daniel, her eyes burned, her fists clenched to suppress the rising tide of anger. Tycoon or criminal? She asked, her voice as cutting as the scalpel she'd wielded in the ER. Or do you think I'm blind and can't tell? Daniel smirked, that familiar half-smile emerging, arrogant and amused as if he relished this showdown. He tilted his head slightly, his damp black hair shifting across his forehead. His low voice dripped with mockery. You're smart, but not enough to figure me out. His eyes flashed with a dangerous glint, a silent warning that she was stepping into Harry's domain, a place she wasn't ready for. Emma stepped closer, her sneakers squeaking on the wood. Her hands braced against the kitchen table as she locked eyes with him, so close she could smell the dried blood and rain on him. I don't need to figure you out, she snapped. Each word is sharp slash. I just need to know you're the trash that dragged me into this mess. Dragon Syndicate. I saved a crime lord. Quite the feather in my medical cap, huh? Her tone dripped with sarcasm, but inside, a storm raged, fury at being ensnared, disappointment for not seeing it sooner. Daniel tilted his head, his gaze unwavering. Her words brushed past him like a breeze, too weak to shake him. You saved me because you can't stand death, he said, his voice, even but edged like the dagger he'd carried. Not because of who I am. He paused, his eyes piercing hers. Don't play the saint here, Doctor. You're more curious than kind. I saw it in your eyes the moment you dragged me in. Emma let out a dry laugh, the harsh sound cutting through the room as she stepped back to regain distance, crossing her arms like an invisible shield. Curious about a guy like you? She shook her head, her eyes flashing with disdain. Don't flatter yourself. I just want to know why I'm a target because of a bastard like you. I'm no hero, but I'm not dumb enough to get pulled into your game without a reason. Daniel fell silent, his eyes darkening as if weighing whether to let her deeper into his world. Finally, he sat up straighter, his hand dropping from his chest, revealing a streak of dried blood on the bandage. His voice lowered, each word a bullet fired. Because I hold something they want, a black ledger. A list of every deal, every secret of New York's elite and criminals. They'll kill anyone to get it, including you. Emma narrowed her eyes, processing his words. Her mind spun with questions. What was this black ledger? Why was it worth killing for? Ledger, she scoffed, her voice thick with sarcasm, hands on her hips as if facing a clumsy liar. Sounds like you're an accountant, not a crime boss. I figured you'd say something like a nuke, something worthy of the Underworld King title. Daniel chuckled, a dry sound brimming with confidence, as if he thrived on doubt and enjoyed dismantling it. Accountants don't carry guns, Doctor, he replied, nodding toward the gold-plated pistol still on the coffee table, glinting under the lamp like a badge of authority. Think that's a toy? Emma cut in, stepping forward to snatch the gun with a swift motion, holding it as if testing its reality. Her fingers traced the cold gold. I think it's proof you're a lunatic. And now you're saying I'm crazy for saving you. What should I do? Hand you to the cops to wash my hands of this. She raised the gun, not to threaten but to challenge, her fiery gaze locked on him. Daniel watched her, a mix of amusement and caution in his eyes, as if facing a worthier opponent than he'd expected. You hand me over, then what? He asked, his voice dropping with defiance, his fist clenching slightly though he stayed calm. Sit and cry when they come for you. Don't be naive. You can't outplay me. Emma set the gun back on the table with a soft clack, stepping right in front of him, so close she could feel his ragged breath through his torn shirt. I'm not playing you, she growled, each word a razor's edge. I'm fighting your stupidity for thinking I'd be scared. Who are you to call me naive? A crime lord shot half dead, crashing on my couch. You've got nothing to brag about, Voss. Daniel didn't reply immediately, just stared, his eyes darkening as he sized up a true equal. His lips pressed into a tight line. You've got guts, he said after a moment, his tone low but devoid of mockery, as if acknowledging something. But guts aren't enough. They don't just want me, they want every trace gone. You were here. You're a trace. Emma clenched her jaw, turning away to hide a flicker of unease. She stepped to the broken window, peering into the pitch-black night. She didn't fear death. She faced it daily in the ER, watching patients take their last breaths. But she hated being dragged into someone else's game, a chess match with rules she didn't know. Then you're my biggest risk, she said, her voice icy, her hand gripping the window frame until her knuckles whitened. I should kick you out right now and let you fend for yourself. Try it, Daniel replied, shrugging despite the wince from his wound, tilting his head with a half smile as if daring her. But don't expect me to get far with this hole in my chest. You'd have to drag me out yourself, and I'm heavy, doctor. Emma laughed, a real, brief sound slicing through the tension. She turned back, her eyes glinting with reluctant amusement. You're funnier than I thought, she said, stepping closer to the sofa, but keeping her distance. But don't think I'll keep you here for cheap jokes. I need a real reason not to turn you in, not your bluster. Daniel went quiet, his eyes flashing a rare seriousness. His hands dropped to his sides, as if shedding a layer of defense. Because I can protect you, he said, his voice low and firm, a promise without flourish. They won't stop, and you can't handle them alone. I'm the only one who knows how to play this and win. Play this? Emma echoed, her tone skeptical, crossing her arms and tilting her head as if assessing a delirious patient. You lost from the start, shot, hunted, lying here because I saved you. How am I supposed to trust you to protect me? I lost this round, Daniel admitted, his eyes darkening, his hand brushing his wound as a reminder to himself. But I'm not dead, and I don't lose twice. You want to live? Stay with me. Not for me, but for you. Emma opened her mouth to retort, but a sudden knock at the door cut through the tension like a knife. She froze, her grip tightening on her phone until the screen lit up under her fingers. Pressure. Daniel sat up straight, his eyes flashing with predatory alertness, his hand inching toward the gun but pausing at Emma's silent gesture to hush. Who's that? He asked, his voice low and sharp, his gaze fixed on the door. Emma didn't answer right away, stepping to the door with light but deliberate strides, like a doctor approaching a critical case. She peered through the peephole, her breath catching as she recognized a familiar figure, Marcus Reed, her hospital colleague, standing in the hallway holding a black umbrella. His demeanor was calm but off, his eyes glinting with feigned worry. She turned to Daniel, whispering tensely, "My friend. He doesn't know you're here." Sure about that? Daniel asked, his gaze icy with suspicion, his fist clenching as if ready to act. My enemies know how to pretend, and they're damn good at it. Emma frowned, unease rising in her chest, but she opened the door, her hand gripping the knob like a final defense. Marcus stepped in, his pale blue eyes scanning the room with unnatural speed before settling on Emma. A faint smile touched his lips like a mask. I was worried about you, he said, his voice soft but strained. Heard there was a small fire around here. You okay? Fine, Emma replied curtly, crossing her arms like an invisible barrier, her eyes locking onto Marcus for any sign of oddity. How'd you know to come? I didn't call you. Word from the neighborhood security, Marcus said, but his gaze flicked briefly to the sofa where Daniel lay hidden behind the backrest, only a bandaged shoulder visible. Got company? His voice dipped. Probing dotted chill ran down Emma's spine, a cold current from her neck to her hands. She glanced at Daniel, catching a slight headshake, a small but clear warning. No, she said, her voice hardening, her grip tightening as if ready to shove him out. I'm tired, Marcus. Thanks for stopping by, but I need rest. Marcus nodded, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. A flicker of greed or fear, she couldn't tell, flashed in his blue gaze. All right, he said, his tone still light but chilling. Call me if you need anything. Okay, Emma replied, her voice flat dot. He turned to leave, his black umbrella swaying slightly, leaving Emma with an unshakable sense of unease creeping into every breath. She shut the door, locking it with a firm click, and turned to Daniel with a mix of suspicion and anger. He asked weird questions, she said, her voice low but sharp, stepping closer to the sofa like she was ready to confront a threat. Like he knows something. Like he knows you're here. Daniel smirked, his eyes darkening with cold certainty. Check your phone, he said, his tone low but laden with warning. I bet he's done something, and not because he's worried about you. Emma frowned, flipping open her phone with a swift motion, her fingers swiping the screen like a doctor checking a pulse. A new message popped up, sent from Marcus minutes ago. He's with you, isn't he? Don't be stupid, Emma. Hand him over. Her hand trembled, not from fear, but rage, blood rushing to her head, making her feel flushed. She turned to Daniel, hurling the phone at him with enough force to spin it midair. My friend betrayed me because of you, she snarled, each word a stab into the air. Proud of that, crime lord? He read the message, then shrugged. his face showing no surprise, as if he'd seen this coming. He chose money over you, he replied, his voice even but cold, tossing the phone back to her with a light, precise flick. Pick smarter friends, or at least don't trust so easily. Smarter, Emma stepped forward, snatching the phone from his hand, her eyes blazing as if she could incinerate him on the spot. I chose to save you, and now I've lost a friend and my safety, all because of you. Don't tell me to be smarter when you're the dumbest one here, dragging me into this mess. Daniel met her gaze for once without a smirk or sarcasm, his deep black eyes darkening like a storm held back. He sat up straighter, his hand dropping from his wound, his voice low but firm. You haven't lost everything. You've got me, and I won't let you die. Not yet. Emma didn't reply, standing still as stone, their eyes locked in an endless moment. In her mind, a question echoed like a warning bell. What trap had she fallen into, and was she smart enough to escape? But deeper still, she knew, though she hated admitting it, that Daniel wasn't entirely wrong. He was a danger, but right now he was also her only way out. Part 4. Peak Danger, Verbal Sparring Amid Action. Emma Carter's apartment was no longer a safe haven. The smoke from the Molotov cocktail lingered in the air, its acrid stench mingling with the suffocating tension between her and Daniel Voss. After Marcus's betrayal, Emma harbored no illusions of escaping this chaos unscathed. She leaned against the kitchen table, clutching a surgical knife from her medical bag, her eyes fixed on Daniel, the man who was both her lifeline and her curse. Daniel sat on the sofa, his cold, sharp gaze sweeping the room. The gold-plated pistol was back in his hand. They're coming, he said, his voice low but certain. He sold us out. You mean you sold me out, Emma snapped, stepping closer. If it weren't for you, Marcus wouldn't have turned on me. Don't act like the victim here, Daniel smirked, a glint of amusement in his eyes. I'm not pretending. But don't you pretend you're innocent either. You saved me. You chose this path. Chose? Emma let out a dry laugh, brandishing the knife as if to threaten. I didn't choose to be hunted like an animal. I saved you because I'm a doctor, not because I wanted to play crime lord with you. Before Daniel could retort, a loud crash erupted from the front door. Wood splintered as someone kicked it off its hinges. 3 masked figures burst in, armed with pistols and daggers. Emma instinctively stepped back, her heart pounding, but Daniel reacted faster than she'd expected. He sprang from the sofa, ignoring his wound, and fired 2 quick shots. One assailant dropped, blood pooling on the floor, but the other 2 charged. You're slow as a turtle, Doctor, Daniel shouted, his voice a mix of frustration and mockery as he shoved Emma out of a dagger's path. You're fast and still got shot. Don't lecture me, Emma yelled back, plunging her surgical knife into the shoulder of an attacker lunging at her. The man howled, collapsing, and she kicked him away. Adrenaline surged. She wasn't a doctor anymore. She was a survivor. Daniel took down the last one with a shot to the chest, then turned to Emma, panting. Not bad, he said, his tone still laced with sarcasm despite the sweat rolling down his forehead. But don't get cocky. We need to move. Move where? Emma demanded, wiping blood from her hand onto her sleeve, her eyes blazing. My home's a war zone because of you. Somewhere I know, Daniel replied, pulling her toward the back door where the fire escape led to the street. Unless you want to stay and be target practice. They raced down the stairs, their footsteps echoing in the tight space. Rain still fell, soaking them as they burst into the alley behind. Daniel led the way, his steps faltering slightly from his injury. Emma followed, arguing as she ran. If you fall, I'm not carrying you. I won't fall, Daniel growled, glancing back. But if you slow down, I won't wait. They reached a black SUV parked nearby, an armored vehicle Daniel had clearly prepped. He yanked the door open, motioning Emma inside. Drive, he ordered, tossing her the keys before sliding into the passenger seat, gun still in hand. I'm not your chauffeur, Emma snapped, but she took the driver's seat, started the engine, its roar drowning out the rain. Where to? She asked. Old casino on the outskirts, Daniel said, his voice low and tense. My spot. Safe for now. Emma floored it, the car tearing through the wet streets. She shot Daniel a skeptical glance. Casino? Don't tell me you're planning to gamble our way out of this. No, Daniel replied, smirking. I gamble to survive. You'll see. They arrived at the abandoned casino, a dilapidated building with a faded sign and shattered windows. Daniel led her inside through a back entrance. The interior was pitch black, reeking of dust and stale liquor. He flicked on a small flashlight, its beam revealing dust-covered blackjack tables and broken slot machines. This used to be my turf, he said, his voice dropping, before it all fell apart. Fell apart because of who? Emma asked, her tone mocking. Enemies, or did you screw it up yourself? Daniel turned, his eyes darkening. Because of Lena, the Viper Cortez, he said, his voice icy. My ex. She wants me dead, and now she's hunting us. Emma laughed, unable to hold it back. Your ex wants you dead? Probably because your mouth's too toxic. Daniel smirked, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. No, he replied, because she wasn't smart enough to keep me. Emma stepped closer, arms crossed. If she's dumb, why'd you fall for her? Or are you no brighter? Daniel didn't answer immediately, just stared, his gaze both defiant and unreadable. Before he could speak, a faint buzz came from his jacket pocket. Emma narrowed her eyes, snatching his phone before he could stop her. The screen lit up, revealing an old message. Use the doctor as bait. Lena will bite. Sent from an unknown number hours ago. Emma's blood boiled as she read it. She spun on Daniel, gripping the phone like she wanted to crush it. I'm your pawn, you bastard, she snarled, hurling it at his chest. Daniel caught it, a flash of irritation crossing his face, but no panic. I changed my mind, he said, his voice low and steady. You're worth more than a pawn. Changed your mind? Emma stepped forward, jabbing a finger at his face. You were going to sell me to her, and now I'm supposed to thank you for changing your mind? I'm not your toy. No, Daniel cut in, rising to face her, his eyes blazing. You're the only one I didn't want to sell. If I'd meant to, you'd be dead the moment they stormed your place. Emma clenched her jaw, itching to punch him, but a loud noise outside interrupted. The roar of an engine echoed, headlights piercing the casino's broken windows. An armored truck barreled toward them, and 3 assassins leaped out, guns at the ready. Run! Daniel yelled, yanking Emma behind an old blackjack table. He returned fire, bullets embedding in the walls, while Emma rummaged through her medical bag, grabbing anything she could use. She pulled out a bottle of alcohol and a rag, swiftly crafting a makeshift Molotov cocktail. What are you doing? Daniel asked, his voice taut as he fired another shot. Don't ask. Shoot, Emma barked, lighting the rag and hurling the bottle at the assassins. Flames erupted, sending one into a panicked stumble. Daniel seized the moment, shooting him down, then dragged Emma toward the back door. They bolted to the SUV, diving in as gunfire rang out behind them. Emma slammed on the gas, the car rocketing down the dark road, tires screeching on wet pavement. Daniel fired out the window, dropping a pursuer, but the truck stayed on their tail. Where'd you learn that trick? Daniel shouted, his voice a mix of anger and surprise. Emma smirked, gripping the wheel. Not from you, clearly. I'm better than you. Daniel glanced at her, a spark of amusement in his eyes, despite the life-or-death stakes. You're insane, he said, firing again. But I like it. They swerved into a narrow alley, losing the truck when the engine's roar faded. Emma stopped the car, panting. She turned to Daniel, her eyes blazing. Don't think I forgive you. Don't need you to, Daniel replied, smirking. But you need me, and I need you. What now, doctor? Daniel asked, his voice low. Emma didn't answer, but a thought flared in her mind. She hadn't lost yet, and she wouldn't let him win. Part 5. Climax. A duel of wits and strength. The atmosphere inside the armored SUV was thick, like a storm about to break. After the fierce chase, Emma Carter and Daniel Voss sat in silence, broken only by their ragged breathing and the steady drumming of rain on the windshield. Emma gripped the steering wheel, her hands still trembling faintly from adrenaline, while Daniel leaned back in his seat, blood seeping through the bandage on his chest. His gaze was as sharp and cold as a blade. They'd escaped death, but both knew the game wasn't over. Lena, the Viper Cortez, and her henchmen were still hunting them, and the Black Ledger remained a knife at their throats. Emma turned to Daniel, her eyes blazing. We can't keep running forever, she said, her voice firm. This has to end. Daniel smirked, that familiar half smile flickering across his face. End it? What are you going to do, doctor? Call the cops? No, Emma cut in, her tone razor sharp. I have a plan. The underground auction, where she's selling your ledger, I'll pose as a buyer and lure her out. Daniel let out a dry laugh, the sound harsh in the confined space. You think you can fool Lena? He tilted his head, his eyes dripping with mockery. You're not ruthless enough. She'll smell your fear a mile away. Emma narrowed her eyes, stepping out of the car into the rain, hands on her hips as she faced him through the open window. I don't need to be ruthless, she snapped, each word a slash. I need to be smart, something you lack. You let her betray you, got yourself shot, and now you're here because I saved you. Don't tell me how to win. Daniel went quiet, a flicker of surprise crossing his face at her confidence. He stepped out of the car, ignoring the pain from his wound, standing opposite her in the freezing rain. Fine, he said, his voice low and challenging. But if you fail, don't say I didn't warn you. I don't fail, Emma shot back, her gaze unwavering. You better not screw up my plan, crime lord. The underground auction took place in an old warehouse on the city's edge, where flickering neon lights illuminated a crowd of black-suited figures in masks. Emma entered, a wide-brimmed hat shading half her face, carrying an empty suitcase, a perfect disguise for a wealthy bidder. Daniel flanked her, disguised in a long coat and sunglasses, his gun concealed beneath the fabric. They'd rehearsed the plan. Emma would bid on the black ledger to draw Lena out, and Daniel would take her down when the moment struck. The air in the warehouse was heavy, thick with cigarette smoke and liquor fumes. An auctioneer stood on a platform, his shrill voice cutting through the noise. Next item, the Dragon Syndicate's secret list. Starting bid, $10 million. Emma raised her hand, her voice icy. 15 million, the crowd murmured, eyes turning to her. Daniel glanced over, whispering, You're overacting a bit. Shut up, Emma replied, not looking at him. I know what I'm doing. The bids climbed, and Emma pushed it to $25 million, a number big enough to turn every head. Suddenly, a woman's voice sliced through from the back, venomous and cold. 30 million. And I want to meet the seller. Emma turned, spotting a figure stepping from the shadows, Lena, the Viper Cortez. Tall and lean, with fiery red hair and piercing green eyes, Lena exuded lethal danger. Dressed in a tight black gown, a long cigarette in hand, her gaze swept the crowd before locking on Daniel. Damien Voss, she said, her tone dripping with scorn. Everyone's soft for a little girl, huh? Emma stepped forward before Daniel could reply. He's soft, but I'm not, she said, her voice steely, meeting Lena's stare head-on. Want to test me? Lena smirked, exhaling a plume of smoke toward Emma. Who are you to talk to me? She tilted her head, suspicion glinting in her eyes. A rat in a pretty shell. I'm the one buying your ledger, Emma replied, lifting the suitcase. But I want to see it first. Or are you afraid I'll spot a fake? Lena's eyes narrowed, clearly provoked. Bring it out, she ordered a henchman. He stepped forward, placing a small hard drive on a table in the warehouse's center. It's real, Lena said, her voice frigid. But you can't afford it. Daniel moved closer, removing his sunglasses, his eyes locked on Lena. You're wrong, he said, his voice low and commanding. I'm here to take it back, end your life. The crowd fell silent, the air thick with impending chaos. Lena laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. She's your bait, isn't she? She pointed at Emma. Clever, but not enough. Before Emma could react, a figure lunged from the crowd, Marcus Reed. He grabbed her from behind, pressing a gun to her temple. Hand over the ledger, Daniel, Marcus growled, or she dies. Emma clenched her jaw, forcing herself to stay calm despite her racing heart. Daniel looked at her, a rare hesitation in his eyes, the first time she'd seen him uncertain. Let her go, he said, his voice low but sharp. The ledger's yours, Lena. Lena smirked, stepping forward to grab the hard drive. Finally getting smart, she said, but I'll still kill you both just for fun. Emma didn't wait. Her hand slipped into her pocket where she'd stashed a syringe from her medical bag. As Marcus's grip slackened, she stabbed it into his thigh, injecting a small but potent dose of sedative. He yelped, staggering, and she drove her knee into his groin, sending him crashing down. Chaos erupted. Daniel charged Lena, grappling with her as henchmen surged forward. Emma grabbed Marcus's gun, firing a warning shot into the ceiling to halt the crowd. "Stay back!" she shouted, her voice booming. Daniel landed a brutal punch to Lena's face, snatching the hard drive, but she drew a dagger from her dress, slashing it into his shoulder. He grunted but didn't falter, twisting to drive her own blade back into her chest. Lena collapsed, blood pooling on the floor, her green eyes wide with shock. Emma rushed over, pulling Daniel away from Lena. "Get up," she barked, hauling him to his feet. Daniel panted, clutching his shoulder, but his eyes still burned. "You're crazy. You almost died," he growled, his voice a mix of anger and concern. "You're the crazy one, letting me do all the work," Emma snapped back, yanking the hard drive from his hand. She smashed it onto the floor, stomping it to pieces under her heel. "It's done." "No one gets it now." Daniel stared, a mix of surprise and respect flashing in his eyes. "You destroyed it?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Yes," Emma replied, turning to him. "Because I don't trust you to keep it without starting more trouble." Before Daniel could argue, distant police sirens wailed. The crowd scattered in panic, leaving Lena dead on the floor and Marcus unconscious nearby. Emma dragged Daniel out the back door, disappearing into the darkness before the cops arrived. They bolted to the SUV, leaping inside. Emma floored it, the car tearing through the pitch-black streets. As the sirens faded, she pulled under a bridge, panting. "It's over," she said, her voice weary but resolute. Daniel looked at her, his gaze free of mockery, replaced by a quiet acknowledgement. "You're better than I thought," he said, his voice low. "But don't get smug. We're not fully clear yet." "Not clear?" Emma turned, smirking. "I just saved us both, and you still call me smug." Daniel chuckled softly, for once without arrogance. "True," he said, "but I like it." Emma didn't reply, but a strange feeling stirred within her, not fear, not anger, but an odd connection to the man she'd once wanted to be rid of. Part 6, Love Through Banter. The rain had long stopped, giving way to a gentle autumn afternoon in Vermont, where Emma Carter and Daniel Voss found temporary refuge after the storm of their past. The small wooden cabin nestled amidst golden fields, surrounded by vibrant red maples glowing under the sunset. A light breeze carried the scent of damp earth and dry leaves, a stark contrast to the gunfire, smoke, and shadows of New York they'd left behind. After their battle with Lena, the Viper Cortez, and the destruction of the Black Ledger, they chose this place not to hide, but to live anew, in their own way. Daniel Voss, once the infamous dragon of the Dragon Syndicate, stood in the yard, wielding an axe to chop wood with powerful, deliberate swings. Lacking the ruthlessness of the crime lord he'd been, he was now dressed in a simple flannel shirt with rolled-up sleeves. His arms bore faint scars, remnants of his days in the dark. He'd relinquished most of his illegal empire, funneling Voss Enterprises' legitimate assets into discreet investment funds. But he hadn't stopped there. Daniel was quietly doing something he hadn't yet told Emma, reshaping the Dragon Syndicate into something new, legitimate, powerful, and stamped with his mark. Emma sat on the porch, cradling a mug of hot tea. Her sharp brown eyes watched Daniel with a mix of defiance, curiosity, and a softness she refused to admit. She'd opened a small clinic in the village, treating the poor for free, children with colds, elderly women with aching joints, hard-working fathers unable to afford medicine. Money from Daniel's anonymous account, which she knew about but pretended to ignore, flowed into local charities, funding schools, and repairing roads. They never spoke of it, but the silence was a tacit agreement. Daniel set the axe down, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, then strode to the porch with his familiar half-smile. "What are you staring at, doctor?" he asked, his low voice laced with challenge as he sat on the step beside her. "You being clumsy," Emma replied, sipping her tea, her gaze sweeping over him as if hunting for a flaw. "Chopping wood like you're fighting. Some things never change." Daniel chuckled softly, leaning against the railing, his eyes locking onto hers. "You like that I don't change," he said, his tone warm with a hint of mockery. "If I got too tame, you'd be bored in a heartbeat." "Bored?" Emma smirked, setting her mug on the wooden table beside her. "I've been bored of you since you bled out on my couch." Now it's just endurance. Daniel tilted his head, a spark of amusement in his eyes. Endurance, huh? He stood, stepping closer, his voice dropping with a dangerous edge. You're staying here, living with me, because of endurance? I don't buy it, Emma. Emma faced him, arms crossed. I'm staying to beat you, she shot back, her gaze blazing with resolve. Don't get cocky, Voss. You're not enough to shake me. Daniel paused, studying her with an expression that shed its mockery for a rare sincerity. He stepped closer, so near she could feel his warm breath in the crisp air. You're already shaken, he said, his voice a low murmur. You just won't admit it. You're the only one who's fought me that I don't want to kill or lose. Emma froze, her heart skipping a beat. She wanted to fire back, to toss a barb and keep her distance, but his eyes, deep, intense, and honest, stopped her cold. What do you need me for? She asked, her voice softer, less sharp. To prove you're not a loser? No, Daniel replied, his hand gently brushing her cheek, his thumb grazing her cool skin. I need you to live. Really live, not just exist. You make me want to stop being Emma and start over. His words cut through her tough exterior like a blade. Emma stared at him, her breath trembling slightly, but she didn't pull away. She felt the shift in him, not empty promises, but a sincerity forged in fire and blood. Then, without overthinking, she rose on her toes, pulled him down, and kissed him. The kiss started slow and tentative, but quickly deepened as Daniel responded. His hands gripped her waist, drawing her close, his lips claiming hers with an unguarded hunger. Emma tasted the salt of his sweat, smelled the wood on his hands, and felt his strong heartbeat sinking with hers. It wasn't a kiss of surrender, but of two equals, neither yielding even in this moment. When they parted, both breathing heavily, Emma met his gaze with a mix of defiance and warmth. Don't think this means I lost, she said, her voice husky but firm. Daniel laughed, the sound ringing through the quiet space. You love me already, he said, his tone brimming with confidence. Admit it. I love shutting you up more, Emma retorted, smirking and pushing his chest lightly to reclaim some space. Don't get delusional, Voss. Daniel caught her hand, holding it tight, his eyes never leaving hers. You won't win forever, he said, his voice warm and low. I'll make you admit it. Not with words, but something else. Try me, Emma challenged, but the smile tugging at her lips betrayed the cold front she tried to maintain. The next day, Daniel led Emma into a small room in the house she'd never noticed. Inside was a simple desk, a laptop, and a whiteboard covered in notes. She frowned, turning to him. What's this? Your new strategy room? Daniel smirked, stepping beside the desk. No, he said, his voice thick with pride. This is where the Dragon Syndicate lives on, my way. Emma narrowed her eyes, scanning the whiteboard. Dragon Charity Fund, community renewal projects, education investments. She turned to him, skepticism in her gaze. You're turning a crime syndicate into charity? Don't mess with me. Not messing, Daniel replied, pointing at the board. I've ditched the dirty stuff, smuggling, killing. But the Dragon Syndicate doesn't have to die. I'm making it legit, powerful, influential, without blood. This fund will support places like your clinic, schools, forgotten communities. Emma fell silent, staring at him with a mix of surprise and doubt. Why? She asked, her voice low. To atone or to show off? For you, Daniel said, his voice steady and deep. You showed me I could do more than kill and profit. The dragon lives on, not in shadows, but in the light you bring. Emma froze, unsure how to respond. She turned away, pretending to study the board, but a warmth crept into her chest. Don't think I'm moved, she said, forcing her tone to stay tough. You're still an arrogant jerk. I know, Daniel replied, chuckling softly. But you like me that way. That afternoon, as Emma brewed tea in the kitchen, a faint sound came from the entrance, the footsteps of a delivery worker. A small package sat at the doorstep, no sender listed. She frowned, picking it up, a flicker of unease passing through her. Inside was a simple note, scrawled in red ink, "The Dragon Syndicate lives on." Daniel stepped up, peering over her shoulder. His eyes darkened, but his lips curled with defiance. "New game?" he asked, his voice low. "Ready for anything?" Emma turned, her gaze alight with resolve and a hint of excitement. "If you lose," she said, a smirk playing on her lips, "don't cry." Daniel pulled her close, his hands firm on her waist, his eyes locked on hers. "I don't lose," he replied, his voice warm with confidence. "Not with you." Emma didn't push him away, tilting her head with a half smile. "Don't make me save you again," she whispered. Daniel leaned down, kissing her forehead lightly, his voice a low promise. "Don't make me pull you out of trouble." They stood there, bathed in Vermont's fiery sunset, hand in hand, their eyes meeting in an unspoken vow. The package sat on the table, a reminder that Daniel's past and hers hadn't fully let go. But now they weren't just survivors, they were a team, an odd pair forged through gunfire, banter, and a kiss that changed everything. With the Dragon Syndicate enduring in Daniel's vision and in Emma's light, they were ready to face whatever came next, together. Thank you for following this heartfelt story of the endless love journey. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts about the story in the comments below. If you believe that true love can withstand all trials and sometimes begins in the simplest of ways, don't forget to hit the like button and share the story with your friends. To never miss out on touching and meaningful stories, subscribe to our channel and help us spread messages of love and warmth to everyone. Let's cherish the beautiful moments of life and love together.